Well, welcome. Welcome to Palm Sunday. Boy, what a difference a week makes, huh? Last week I was out here. My neighbors were out thinking I was crazy talking to a laptop computer. 75 degrees, and today, 30 degrees colder, and not one neighbor's out, so that'll be good. Hey, start off Palm Sunday with a question. When you think of a hero, what images come to mind? I mean, is it a strong, take-no-crap kind of person whose presence commands respect? Maybe a knight that comes riding in on a white horse? And what about today's story? What about today's story about Jesus? You know, he rode into town on a jackass, not a white horse. And I think that's significant because 2,000 years ago, horses represented war. They were signs of a warrior winning a battle. Donkeys were a sign of peace. People were expecting a king back then, a warrior. And instead, they got a carpenter. Now, here's a crazy idea to kind of put things into perspective. Imagine that scene from Top Gun where Tom Cruise is racing down the runway on his motorcycle. And to make it apply to this story about Jesus, we're going to replace Tom Cruise and the motorcycle. Say with Ron Howard and a tricycle. Yeah. Now, imagine that. The anticipation of our hero, Ron Howard. Richie Cunningham himself, waving his fist in the air as a fighter jet takes off. And as we pan back, we see that Richie isn't sitting on Fonzie's motorcycle. Instead, we have Ron Howard balancing himself on a tricycle at the end of a runway. Now, how's that for an image of a hero? But that's pretty much the scene when Jesus entered Jerusalem. A conqueror who the whole town had been waiting for to save them came riding into victory, into this celebration, if you will, on a mule. This was supposed to be their savior, and he's on top of a jackass. Some hero, huh? But that's what happened. Jesus rides into town on a donkey. So I guess this must have been the image that God wanted us to remember. Not that of a war-crazed general who's going to defeat the entire Roman army, but instead, Prince of Peace. You and I might have been thinking, hey, Peter, go find me a horse so I can get off my ass, huh? And you got to wonder, what was God thinking? Well, there's got to be a reason God sent his son into the city on a mule. He had to know that in just a few days, these same crowds that were cheering him on were going to be demanding that he be crucified. And you have to ask why. What kind of father would let their son walk into this kind of a death trap? What does that say about God's love? And there's something else to think about. You know, there are some religions that refer to today, to Palm Sunday, as Passion Sunday, as in the Passion of the Christ. The word passion comes from the Greek word pasho, and it means to suffer. So when we talk about the passion of Christ, we're really talking about Jesus' suffering. And what does that say about God's love? Yep. There's a car doing wheelies down the street, I think. I could pan that over there, but that would take away from this. Look, in this passage from John's Gospel, maybe God's love takes the form in the unlikeliest of heroes, riding into a welcome celebration on the most unlikely of animals. And God had to know the pain that Jesus would suffer in just a few days. You know, maybe God's love allows this kind of stuff to happen. Maybe his love is so deep that he allows us to feel pain. And I know that's a hard thing to accept. But if God allowed his son to suffer, a son he must have loved, then I think we can be reassured that what God allows for us, for the most part, is out of love. I don't know, you're saying, yeah, right. He might allow it because he's not feeling it. He's not feeling our suffering. Well, maybe we shouldn't be so sure about that. I'll try to explain. I'm going to take this hammer, and I'm going to smash my thumb with it. Now, those of you who know me understand this probably isn't too far of a stretch. But in order to demonstrate God's love, I'm going to really smash this hammer as hard as I can down on my thumb. And when I do this, what's going to happen? Now, besides me screaming like a baby and dropping more F-bombs than Andrew Dice Clay in his day, my body's going to undergo some rapid changes, especially my central nervous system, my nerves. You know, even though I smashed my thumb, Where's the pain being registered? My thumb's going to be mangled, but where's the pain center to tell me my thumb is mangled and is throbbing? Well, it's my brain. The nerves in my thumb become smashed, and a signal sent to my brain. My brain then sends messages out, not only that I'm an idiot, but that my thumb is hurting like holy. My thumb's really hurting. You know, our brains feel the pain of each and every body part we injure or damage. Of every illness or disease we get, our brain feels that discomfort and pain. And in fact, our brains also have to hurt whenever our heart breaks. And it has to worry and feel that anxiety whenever we get those butterflies in our stomachs. Everything is interconnected and, to a certain extent, interdependent on each other. So how's my sore thumb have anything to do with God's love? Well, what if my thumb and all the other parts of my body represented different people? Now, we're all interconnected somehow, and the brain is the boss of all of us. The brain feels the pain of any body part that gets injured. And when we consider that Jesus is really God in human form, we have to accept, I think at least, that God felt the pain and anguish that Jesus endured. And there's no reason to believe that since we're God's children, he doesn't feel our pain. Whether we're a thumb or a big toe or anything in between, when we hurt, our brain also hurts. God feels our pain right along with us. He feels our deepest hurts and he feels our suffering. You know, Jesus rode into town on that mule for you and for me. For all of us who have fears and doubts and questions, he was going to set an example for God's love. Not as a conquering warrior, but as a humble man of peace. And he was doing it with the love of his Father riding right alongside him. I think he had the reassurance that he wasn't alone. And I think that's true for all of us, too. God knew his son was on the highway to the danger zone when he reached the gates of that city. And I think Jesus himself had to know he was riding right into the danger zone, just like the song. He knew what his fate was. And yet he didn't turn back. He didn't ask for reinforcements. There was no Alert 5 aircraft or rescue helicopter to pluck him out of trouble if he had to eject. He only had himself and the comfort of knowing whatever pain, whatever suffering lie ahead, he wasn't going to go through it alone. You know, maybe the good news in this message just might be as simple as realizing we're not alone. Not in our joy, and certainly not in our pain and in our sorrow. Like a parent who watches their son or daughter be rejected for a prom date, or dumped by that loser that we knew they should have never gone out with in the first place. God feels that same emotion that we feel when our children are hurting. You know, when our kids hurt, we hurt right alongside them. And we wish that somehow we could take that pain for them. Whether it's getting sewn up in the emergency room or crying ourselves to sleep because their hearts are broken. All we can do, though, is put our arms around them and reassure them that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. And you know what? I think things are going to be all right. We're not alone in our struggles, in our journey to wherever we're going. For me and for you, I think everything's going to work out. You just got to have a little faith. God bless everybody. See you next week, and wish me luck. I'm going to go hang a few pictures and put a few shelves together. Let's see how this goes.